Hello everyone, and welcome to the campaign for an English Parliament. From the vantage point of the present day, we can look back over the last 60 years and see the failure of government after government and the woeful consequences of their attempts to rule our country. Successive administrations have degraded our economy and impoverished large swathes of our country either by incompetence or design. One area of policy that has had negative effects on the working class more than most is town planning. Back in the 60s, before we had multiplex cinemas, you would get double feature films with ads in between. On one such visit to see a film, if memory serves me right it was called Modesty Blaise, I saw an ad extolling the virtues of modern architecture that went along the lines of, "No more living in dingy old Victorian houses. Now you can live in light and airy castles in the sky." Of course they were no such thing. They were tower blocks, blighting large areas of our cities with their brutalist architecture, and blighting the lives of many of those who were forced to live in such places. Vibrant traditional communities were ripped apart and destroyed on the altar of town planning and community cohesion. Now don't get me wrong, apartment blocks can be a convenient way of living in inner city environments. Depending on how much effort and resource the builders and the landlords put into the development, they could be well appointed and comfortable, plush even. However, that's not the tower blocks I'm thinking of. And it was not the sort that many of the local authorities built, which were simply concrete boxes with very basic amenities, seemingly based on the same principle as battery farms for chickens, cramming in as many people as possible in as small a space as possible for maximum efficiency. Give them just enough space to sleep, sit in front of the television, cook their food and have a bath. Sorted. This was never architecture for quality of life. The bedrock philosophy of this school of architecture was, of course, form should follow function. The function in this instance was to cram them in as tight as possible, tell them to be grateful, and forget about them. The form of this policy has caused the brutalisation of large areas of our cities and many of our communities. But, I hear you say, surely they have learned their lesson and are not building that sort of tower block anymore, but proper houses. Yes, in some instances this is true, and I say good job to all those councils and housing associations that have built proper houses, and they should be applauded. In many cases though, councils have built the same kind of modernist architecture, just at ground level, tower blocks on their side as it were, small rooms, non-existent or tiny gardens, paper-thin walls allowing noise pollution between properties, lack of local amenities, overcrowded schools and doctors' surgeries, expensive public transport, lack of entertainment facilities, and the same soulless existence. As a consequence, substandard housing remains to this day a pressing issue in England, affecting the health, well-being and opportunities of thousands of individuals and families. Defined by indifferent construction, inadequate insulation, overcrowding and unsafe conditions, substandard housing is more than a personal inconvenience. It is a social crisis for a large proportion of the working class in England, with significant political ramifications. Poor housing can be linked closely to adverse health conditions. Damp and mould, often found in poorly maintained homes, can exacerbate respiratory conditions such as asthma and bronchitis. Cold homes are linked to increasing winter mortality rates, particularly among the elderly. Mental health is also impacted. The stress of living in overcrowded or unsafe conditions can lead to anxiety and depression. Social isolation on large estates is another common problem, with the elderly and many women feeling unsafe, especially at night. Children in poorly maintained schools often suffer, with disrupted tuition, limited space to study in overcrowded classrooms, with subsequently a greater likelihood of falling behind and not attaining higher education. Families in poorly maintained social housing or unaffordable private rentals frequently struggle to meet basic needs. Energy inefficiency in old housing stock leads to higher utility bills, further straining limited incomes. The lack of security in private rentals, especially for those on low wages or benefits, contributes to housing instability and homelessness. English voters increasingly view housing as a key political battleground. Polls consistently show housing affordability and availability as a top concern, particularly among younger people and those in urban areas. Political parties across the spectrum have responded by promising more investment in affordable housing, stricter regulations for landlords, and increased rights for tenants. However, critics argue that successive governments have failed to deliver meaningful reform. We are now told that the government is going to build 1.5 million affordable and social homes, even relaxing planning permission on the Greenbelt to do so. All the while, our inner cities and larger towns decay and rot. The inequality of housing conditions also exacerbates political division. In affluent areas, homeowners often resist new developments, citing concerns about property values or local character. Meanwhile, these struggling in inadequate housing feel alienated by the political process, believing that the system only works for newcomers. This fuels mistrust in institutions and can lead to voter apathy. Living in substandard housing is not only a matter of individual hardship, but a reflection of broader social and political failures, for which the two main Westminster parties are justly to blame. Its effects have been seen in health, education, economic opportunity, and inequality. If England is to address the housing crisis successfully, we must realise it cannot be done with the present Westminster system, which has proved over the last 6 decades that the housing of England's working class is in no way a priority as far as they are concerned. We need a parliament that puts England first. Be a hero and come and join the campaign for an English Parliament, and help us fight for a fairer England. The CEP has always tried to be a voice for the voiceless in England. So come and add your voice to ours, and help us call for a referendum on England's future, and be a rebel with your vote. England is worth it.